Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Paul. I'm the Senior Director of Wellbeing and Brain Health for Asbury Communities. Welcome to this month's episode of Ask Asbury. As we do every January, we ask ourselves some questions about how do I find more purpose, or should I set New Year's resolutions this year, and how do I find more meaning and purpose in my life? For many people, there comes a time when the old way of setting priorities stops working. For years, the answer was simple. I just need to make more money. I just need to stay busy. I just need to keep producing. But eventually, I realized that sometimes making more money is just like a means. It's a means to the goal. It's not the end goal in itself. So it's hard to find meaning in something like that. And when that realization hits you, whether you're still working or stepping into a new chapter outside of the workforce, it raises a bigger question. If money and busyness are no longer the goal, then what is? That question shows up for professionals who are trying to lead and grow teams and avoid burnout. It also shows up for people who have recently left full-time work, or maybe people who've been out of work for quite a while and are rethinking how they want to spend their time and their energy and their talent. My guest today helps people navigate that exact shift. Whitney Hahn works with mid and senior career professionals who discover that their businesses and teams can only grow if they outgrow busyness. She brings a practical framework for clarifying personal priorities and aligning energy with what matters most, and building high-performing environments without defaulting to constant motion. Today, we're going to explore a concept she calls meconomics, and how rethinking priorities through a personal lens can change how we work, lead, and thrive in this next chapter. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Dr. Sue, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're the best, Whitney. So thanks for coming on today. I want you to tell our audience about a term you use I find so interesting. You use the term meconomics to describe the shift in how people set their priorities.
Right.
At a high level, what does that mean?
Well, so often, particularly throughout our professional career, we think of the economic drivers in our businesses or in our life. What do we need to make that bonus? What's the sales goal? What's our productivity look like, etc. And sometimes, in pursuit of those economic goals, we can lose sight of the things that actually matter to us individually. The old phrase, we're so busy making a living, we forget to make a life, is an old phrase because it's been a reality for a very long time. And so several years ago, in thinking about this for myself, I said, well, what happens when I put me first? And that's when the term me-conomics popped into my head. And I started scoring my life a little differently and looking outside of just that financial marker that other people might consider, air quotes, successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was there a personal point in your life when that, traditional goal setting, wasn't really serving you anymore?
Yeah, there absolutely was. And it came in 2018. Now, it shouldn't take a serious medical diagnosis of two individuals that you love for you to really take stock of your life. But for me, it did. I'm sometimes a hardhead that way, Sue. And so in 2018, I had my sister was diagnosed with lymphoma, my spouse was diagnosed with progressive MS, and I was feeling burnt out in the business that I had created. I'm a second generation entrepreneur. And so it was at that moment that I said, "Hey, I'm not sure that pursuing the financial goals is really the end goal that I thought it was. What I really want is something different." And that put me on a journey to find a way to capture my own economics, get clear on them, and then live intentionally into them instead of only pursuing money. Now, let me pause here for a moment because just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with having a healthy revenue. What was wrong for me was putting that first at potentially the expense of my own health, at the expense of the free time that I had to spend with people that I cared about. There are different costs associated with only that hustle mentality and the pursuit of a particular financial goal. And I'm not sure that, particularly in America, we often talk about those costs
Mm-hmm.
because we are so often a consumer driven kind of goal setting.
Yeah. I think it's true for a lot of people. They reach, life has a way of level setting what's important
Hmm.
to you and refocusing you. But sometimes you don't want to wait until there's a tragedy or a really a hard stressor in life to make that pivot.
Exactly. You
So
shouldn't you
first,
shouldn't have to wait that long. Don't do what I did. Don't wait,
but
don't
I
wait
think
that long.
so many people do. They get that, their priorities become very clear once there's, you know, a challenge to it, like there's something. So what's a different way people could set priorities? Could you walk us through like the basic process you use to do that other than,
Sure.
having terrible things happen to you?
First of all, I think you have to recognize that busy is too often confused for productive. Or that's the default
Mm,
answer, particularly in a career setting, but maybe even outside of a career setting. If I were to see you on the street and I said, "Hey, Sue, how's it going?" 90% of the time, your answer would be, "Oh man, it's so busy." Like
mm,
that's our badge of honor.
yeah.
And so the first thing you have to do is kind of shake yourself, flip that mental etch a sketch over in your head, clear it all out, and say, wait, 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 wait. That does not need to be my default answer.
Right.
Just because the calendar is full doesn't mean that there's meaning in your calendar. So let's erase busy as the default answer. Start there. And then think about how you want to be living. What are the things, the me economics that are truly important to you? In my quest for this, I explored tools like traditional goal setting, New Year's resolutions, vision boards. And these tools maybe work for other people, but they didn't work for me. So, in creating the framework that I use to help other people uncover their me economics, I pulled from about 6 key sources and did a Whitney mashup, made it my own.
Well, we need that because a lot of those traditional ways, they've been around forever, but they don't work for everyone. I mean, setting a New Year's resolution, what do they say, 3 weeks, and people are
Maybe.
done with maybe that. So we need a new way framework for thinking about getting priorities straight and working towards goals. So how did new way embrace this new way of defining success change the way you started thinking about your priorities?
It really upended them. And at first, quite honestly, it was disruptive to those people around me because they were used to me working under a certain operating system. And now I wasn't. Now, very quickly, they realized how it benefited them as well as me, how much happier I was, how much more centered I was, how much more focused I was on pursuing the things that were truly important to me. And a happy Whitney is a good thing for all those happy people
Yeah.
around me. So that worked out. But to be clear, it was a little disruptive. Anytime you make a major perspective change like that, you should, I think it's natural to anticipate there will be some ripple effects in people who are expecting you to operate a certain way. Now, I did this exercise for myself, and when I found out how useful it was, I did bring it into the workforce, first to my own employees, and then to many of the clients that I'm working with, whether that's executive coaching or team coaching. And what it does is it helps bring visibility to what truly motivates you. So, again, if you're in a career setting and you're any sort of servant leader or caregiving leader, you want to know what really motivates people. Spoiler alert, Sue, it's not always the paycheck that is the top motivator. And outside a career setting, you still need to find meaning. If you're retired, if you're figuring out what that second or third or fifth chapter of your life looks like, chances are you're in pursuit of what's meaningful to me right now. And it
Mm-hmm.
won't be the same thing that was meaningful to you 10 or 20 or 40 years ago. That would be
Mm-hmm.
unlikely unless you really get down to the core of it.
Yeah. I see that parallel too for people, maybe not just people in the workforce who are working for a paycheck, but even people who've been caregivers their whole life, carers, that they've been moms, then they pivot into caring for their older parents, and then they reach a chapter where, I think I'm going to explore my economics and see what matters to me and how that must be very difficult for the people around them to see that change occur. Like, how do you start designing your days around yourself when, these other people are so used to these expectations of what you're going to do for them. So I see that as a parallel too, not just the workforce, but
And that's a great point. We're going to talk about how this actually works in just a few minutes, but I will say at this point, Sue, that sharing what you came up with the people in your circle that matter to you is a really important step to take because it helps demystify why you're making certain changes. If people are used to you behaving a certain way, and suddenly you're doing something different, your decision matrix or criteria seem to be different, but they don't understand why, they may come to the wrong assumptions.
Hmm.
So let me give you an example of how this showed up for me. My top three Meconomic drivers ended up being number one, above anything else, I want a joyful marriage. Number two, I want to be available for my parents as they continue to age and transition in their lives. They're both still alive. They're in their early 80s, and I want to help them thrive as much as they helped me thrive earlier in my life. And the third goal was finally about something that had to do with my business. As a second generation entrepreneur, you might have anticipated the first goal was about my business, but when it came right down to it, it wasn't. So when I articulated this to my family, even to my coworkers, I said, this means my scorecard is changing a little bit. So now, instead of just looking at, well, what was my revenue this year, or am I qualifying for a bonus this year, or whatever it might be, I'm saying, how many times when my mom and dad come into town and say, hey, Whitney, we're going to be in town today. Do you have time for lunch? How many times can I say yes to that invitation? That goes in my scorecard. That's part of my
Hmm.
bank. When I, instead of leaving paid time off or vacation days on the calendar, how many times can I now actually completely enjoy vacation unplugged? That goes on my scorecard. It's a different way of setting up your world. And when you're able to convey your new rules to those people around you, you may be surprised by how much support that you get.
Yeah. So let me ask you a hard question, Whitney.
It's about time. I've been waiting. Go ahead.
Now, this is a hard question because I don't think there's an easy answer. But when there's people when people don't have a lot of choice in their life, they have to do for survival. They have to earn the paycheck and they have to take care of, kids, parents, spouses.
Sure.
And there's not a lot of time for me. How do you build that in? How can you recreate the scorecard when, there's actual responsibilities and obligations that just aren't going to go away? How do you navigate that?
It's a great question because you're right. There are real world obligations and responsibilities that each one of us has. Um, I'm sorry if I gave the impression that you have to be, financially independent in order to live into your Meconomics. You don't. Instead, I would suggest that first getting clarity on what they are is always the important step. If you don't know what you want, there's zero chance you're going to get it. But once you do know this is what feeds your cup, this is what at the end of your life you will be happy that you did or that you said no to. This will be something that you're happy that other people say about you. That is when you can start to make even tiny choices over the course of your day or your week or your month. And I'll give you two examples of that. First of all, in setting your own priorities and what you say yes to. I have a dear friend, Laura Wallace, who taught me years ago that if you cannot enthusiastically say yes, in her words, if it's not a hell yes,
Hell yes.
then it probably should be a no.
Hmm.
And I think that maybe, I'm going to say something that might be risky here. I think that may be even more important for women to hear than for men to hear. If you're just naturally a people pleaser and that
Hmm.
is how you feel like you have your worth measured, then that is a phrase you need to understand. So if you
Hmm.
can't say enthusiastically yes to an opportunity, to an invitation, whatever, then say no. No, thank you. It's
Hmm.
it's it's a full sentence. No, thank you. No
It's a full
explanation
sentence.
necessary. Full stop. Period. Turn the
I love
page.
that.
That's
I
right.
think what you said, it just rang a bell for me. When you said about getting clear, getting clear on things, defining things, takes away the complaint side of it. Like not poor me. I don't want to say it like that, but I have all these obligations, and I can't because of all these things. But if you're clear on the things that you want, or those little things that fill your cup, it's easier to go after them because you're not overwhelmed by all the things you can't do. You're focused on these little wins, right? That accumulate, that add up, that feed your cup, that help you move forward and feel more satisfied. I think that's a big lesson that I've learned.
You're absolutely right. It can be really easy to fall into I'll call it a poor me kind of a feeling. Victim mentality might be how someone else says it, and become resentful about all of these requests that are being made of you. If you are able instead to square your feet and take agency of your decisions and say, this is being requested, I'll say yes because this person matters to me. This relationship matters to me. The cost savings matters to me. So I'll do it myself instead of hiring somebody for it. When you're saying to yourself, I'm saying why because, and you understand what that why is, I think it is easier to swallow even the cold lima beans of your life, right? That's my veto
Right.
vegetable. Do not like them, but I recognize that sometimes that's part of life, and I need to do that too because
Mhm.
I care, because I have a
Right.
sense of responsibility about a certain thing. And there's a nobility in that. Please just don't do that at the cost of your own energy, your own life, your own joy, because you
Hmm.
matter too.
Hmm. So is that how we get our priorities? That's what's bubbling to the top for me, is that we're saying yes to the things that fill our cup. We're setting priorities because we know we've been clear about what we want versus a big giant thing or nebulous thing. We want these little things that help us, that are they're attainable, first of all. So that's a
Right.
win. But they help us move forward toward purpose and meaning and satisfaction and contentment. And so am I right? Did
You're
I sum it
absolutely
up
on
okay?
track. Yes. If you're clear on what your end goals are, whether that's end goal for this year or end goal for your life, then your energy will flow there, your choices will become more clear in protecting that energy, and you will have alignment, more alignment through your life. So I said I was going to give you two examples. The hell yes, if it's not a hell yes, it should be no is one. And another one comes from when I did this work with a client of mine, also an entrepreneur, and his sons are working in the business. And I asked him to do the think near the end of your life sort of exercise. Maybe this is one that's familiar for many of your listeners as well. And think about what person he wants to speak at his funeral and what he wants them to say. Now, that particular permutation I'd never heard in this exercise. Who do you want to speak on your behalf to reflect on your life? And what do you want them to say? And after about 5 minutes of quiet writing, I asked him to share what he was comfortable sharing. And it was really emotional for him, and it got very emotional for me because he said, I want my son, both of them actually, two of them were working in the business with him. I want my sons to speak at my funeral, and I want them to say, when we were up, he celebrated us. And when we were down and struggling, he taught us how to lead. And I thought
Wow.
that was so beautiful. So then, since they were working in the business with him, I said, okay, well, what as an entrepreneur, what as a business owner are you doing intentionally to help your sons learn how to lead when they aren't already struggling? How can you more proactively build leadership learning opportunities throughout their life, including what they do at your office? And although he had that as a personal meconomic driver, he'd never really thought about
Hmm.
intentionally, purposefully, proactively building that into their routines every day. It shifted the dynamic immediately. And it was just amazing and beautiful to watch.
Gosh, Whitney, this is so simple and brilliant at the same time.
Well,
Like,
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome, but it's true. And I love this framework, and I love how I just love how practical and implementable, is that a word? It is implementable.
We're going to say it's a word. It is
It's a
now.
word today. So for this month of January, where we're going to be pushing ourselves, toward a goal or toward new priorities, what is our next step?
There are two ways that you can get this information. I will give you the really quick, too long, didn't read version in just a moment. But if you want the full version with a guided video and a workbook, it's available on my website for free. There's no email opt in. You're not going to be part of a sales chain. It's a passion project of mine. And you will find that at provokebetter.com/meconomics. So you get that. But in the short term, if you want the easy version, you're basically looking at three aspects of your life: contribution, experiences, and growth. So think about the three things, one in each area, that you would like to have this year. Don't change your calendar yet, but name one experience, one growth goal, one contribution that you want to bring into your life this year, or this month, or this week, or today, right? Pick your timeline. It's your life. You get to choose. And then compare those desires to perhaps how just last week went. Did you win in any of those last week? Could you add to your scorecard last week? Or was it, no, I'd rather chuck that? That goes on my chuck it list, not my bucket list. Notice the mismatch without any judgment in yourself. Don't should all over yourself, but notice how what you did last week differs from what you want in the next week. And then think about what micro changes you can make to get just a little bit closer to the three big wishes that you want in the coming days.
Wow, Whitney, thank you so much for that. It really is a really wonderful way to end our show and to think about our new year ahead. So, for the listeners, please check out Whitney's free Meconomics little worksheet you can do at provokebetter.com/Meconomics. Thanks again, Whitney. It's been great to have you.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year.